Good morning and welcome to Rising. Our busy week continues. New details are emerging about the Secret Service 4 days after the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. CNN reports that U.S. authorities have obtained intelligence from a human source in recent weeks on a plot by Iran to try to assassinate Donald Trump. Now, that development had led to the Secret Service increasing security around the former president already before the assassination attempt. Really? While there's zero indication that Thomas Matthew Crooks had any connection, by the way, to the Iran plot, it certainly raises a lot more questions about the Secret Service's failure to protect Trump if they were in additional security mode when that happened. Now, Iran denies any knowledge or involvement in a plot to assassinate former President Trump. Secret Service officials, for their part, have warned the Trump campaign multiple times against holding rallies outdoors, as those create greater risks than rallies that would be inside. The Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle also blamed the sloped roof for not putting a sniper team on the building the shooter was actually on. Here's what the director said when asked by ABC News who was to blame. Let's watch.
Who is most responsible for this happening?
What I would say is that the Secret Service is responsible for the protection of the former president.
So the buck stops with you?
The buck stops with me. I am the director of the Secret Service. It was unacceptable, and it's something that shouldn't happen again.
The President and Homeland Security Secretary said today they had 100% confidence in you, but there are some members of Congress calling on you to resign.
I appreciate the Secretary's comments, and we're going to continue to be transparent and communicate with people.
You plan to stay on? Absolutely.
I do plan to stay on.
The New York Times reports that 3 videos posted on social media show that sniper teams were facing
teams, I think.
Teams? Sorry.
There's an R in there.
How did I read too? Teams. Got it. Thank you. The New York Times reports that 3 videos posted on social media show that sniper teams were facing in the direction of the shooter just under 2 minutes before he fired at Trump. The Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General has said it's investigating the Secret Service's handling of security on the day of the assassination attempt, and many have reacted to the news online. In a viral tweet, actor John Cusack wrote, quote, "I hate conspiracy theories because they avoid the open conspiracies we see with our eyes. That said, it's unthinkable that the Secret Service doesn't cover the one roof staring at the stage. Zero chance. Also, no Secret Service action in history lets the candidate stop for a photo op. They cover the body and move it off-site about as fast as completely possible to imagine. See Reagan assassination attempt? Makes zero sense." And Elon Musk tweeted this picture with the caption, "Visual approximation of the Secret Service Director Cheeto's foolproof assassination protection strategy." And as for the gunman, little remains known about his motive. FBI agents were able to crack into his phone. And interestingly, Pittsburgh's WPXI also reports a transmitter device was found next to Crooks moments after he was shot. So who was he in communication with, Robby? Iran?
I guess it could be. Now, they're denying any connection between the two, but I find this remarkable that what we saw was apparently heightened security. It was beyond normal security, supposedly. So this is, and I understand why conspiracy theories are flying. I've seen that some conservative people, including I think Sean Davis of the Federalist, wrote an article saying essentially that Biden had arranged for this on purpose, which I don't think is the case at all. But I understand why people are going to that kind of thing, because this seems inconceivable that they would screw up so badly. Let's call it what it is. It is clearly a screw up that they missed that roof. If you can see the whole arrangement for where things were, seems incredible. That they were inside the building, rather than monitoring on the top of it. That bystanders saw the guy climbing onto the roof, taking up position, and the police were slow to act. That having gotten that information, if you're not even, I can understand not wanting to just like shoot at random people before you understand the circumstance, if you're the police, if you're the Secret Service. But if you know that someone has said, and they did know because the bystanders were saying there's somebody on that roof, you get Trump off the stage immediately. They just take him off and they go. So it seems like it's incredible that proper protocols were not followed here. I can't believe she's not resigning. She should obviously resign, and we need to fully understand what happened here. And the sloped roof comment she made, we talked about this yesterday. She said, well, we didn't want them on that roof because it's a sloped roof. Well, A, it being a sloped roof proved no problem for the shooter, and B, they were on a different roof that was sloped, the sniper team that actually shot him. So that excuse makes absolutely no sense. Sloped roof? I was seeing a lot of memes. I created a few of my own. You should check my Twitter feed of like sloped roof related. Oh no, a sloped roof. We can't do anything. We've been thwarted entirely in our plan because of a slight angle to this roof. Most roofs are sloped.
Why can day laborers scale a sloped roof, but not the Secret Service with more technology and resources? And I think that's why people are drawn to conspiracy theories, because it's very hard to believe that the United States, with the amount of money they have for security detail that's already allocated for security detail and defense, that this kind of failure happened when supposedly very smart people are working in the U.S. security field and industry, that something like this could happen. It's almost impossible to believe, with the personnel and resources that they have access to, that this wasn't on purpose, that it was negligent. And I think that's why, the floodgates are open for all kinds of conspiracy theories. I mean, at first, people were coming out the gate saying, looks staged. But with the evidence that we get, it's becoming more and more likely that this was more than just a failure of Secret Service. People are joking it was one of Biden's official acts. I don't think that's true.
Oh, because it's been cleared by the Supreme Court.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we're laughing, we're making fun of the situation because it's so ridiculous. Obviously, it's thank goodness Trump is safe. Now, someone died as a result of this. Always important to remember. Someone behind Trump was shot in the head and killed. It's just, it makes me wonder, is Secret Service just security theater? Is it the case that thankfully no one really tries or has tried in recent years to assassinate the president, and that's why it doesn't happen? And in fact, this kind of protection is like TSA, whereas it costs a lot of money and it's obnoxious and it doesn't meaningfully enhance our security because people, if they really want to bring a knife or whatever through airport security, can and do all the time. They miss items like that. They empty out your water bottle and your hairspray, but they, miss knives all the time. Is it just another example of security theater?
Right, and why we have TSA is because of 9/11. Why did 9/11 happen? Was it a terrible fault of, American security not using the resources they have to protect the country? Again, yes, there's a parallel there. You have RFK Jr. sort of stroking the fire when it comes to conspiracy theories around that, saying he's not going to say his side on it. But I think you're right to point to the American ego, that we didn't think anyone would attack us because we're America. We didn't think anyone would try and shoot the president because who would try and shoot the president? No one's done that in so long.
In a long time. Obviously, there was an assassination attempt against Reagan in the 80s,
right,
against Ford. And then obviously U.S. presidents have been assassinated before. Kennedy, McKinley, Lincoln, Garfield. I think that's all.
And ego is how we got both presidents now. That's what's running both of their campaigns. It seems to me that ego's running the country, and sometimes in the direction of terrible things happening.
There was a high level of political violence in the developed world in the mid to late 1800s, with multiple leaders, both elected leaders and reigning monarchs in Europe being assassinated. Obviously, political assassination starting World War I at the kind of tail end of the assassination period. That was very, very bad for human society. It's destabilizing. We certainly don't want to return to an era of political violence. So I certainly hope this is not the start of something new. But one way for it to not be the start of something new is for Secret Service to be, staffed and funded appropriately. I have a hard time believing they're not. This does seem more like human error than anything else. But we're going to talk to a former Secret Services officer coming up, so perhaps we'll get some answers to our questions.
Yeah, and I think possibly to address the political violence, we've seen it correlate, historians have pointed to this, to extreme wealth inequality. So they could address that if they want to see the political violence go down in the country. I know Robby disagrees with me, but
we need to bring the slope of the roofs down.
Yeah.
That's what's really going to
we'll just do that. We'll address the symptoms, not the problem at its root.
More Rising right after this. The Secret Service and its ability to protect the president are coming under heavy fire after Saturday's assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. As we discussed earlier in the show, intelligence agencies did know of an Iranian threat to kill Trump, and supposedly there were adjustments made to Trump's security detail. Still did not prevent 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks from firing a rifle at Trump from a nearby building, a rooftop, at the Pennsylvania rally on Saturday. We've got a lot of questions about this. Joining us now to answer some of those is Bill Gage, former U.S. Secret Service special agent under Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama, and now a senior security consultant with Safe Haven Security Group. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Robbie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really fascinated to get your perspective. Myself, Jessica, and so many of our viewers, and so many people on social media, other commentators, have a lot of questions about what went wrong because it looks like a massive security failure. Now, Kimberly Cheadle is saying she's not going to, the head of the Secret Service, saying she's not going to resign, said something about a sloped roof being the reason the snipers were not on that roof, although they were on another roof that was also sloped. What can you describe it, from your perspective? Was there a security failing, or why was that roof not secured? Why was the shooter able to gain access to it? What exactly went wrong?
Well, first of all, Robbie, I just want to say as an American, I was appalled. I am a student of history, and I wish we could get back to, an atmosphere in American politics where politicians would beat each other up in the media all week and then sit down on Friday nights and have a glass of scotch and a cigar like, the Reagan and Tip O'Neill model. So as a father and an American, I was pretty appalled. As a security consultant and a former agent, of course, I have questions. And so when I'm watching the video of that almost in real time of the incident, I have a lot of questions too. So, I think some of Director Cheadle's comments have been misinterpreted about the slow roof. So, in my 13 years as an agent, I never once actually stood on a sloped roof. So the sort of security protocols from the service's point of view is they'll just control access to the roof, whether you'll be posted up inside in a hallway, controlling the ladder that leads up to the roof. You might have a perimeter post around the building if it's an outside roof access. And, when she made the comments about it being unsafe, really the only people in the service that are trained in kind of being secured by a rope if they have to rappel off of a building would be the CS or some of the CAT guys. So we received extra training in that when I was on CAT. So sort of your run-of-the-mill post-tender agent is not going to have training in how to be safe up on a sloped roof. So I think some of her comments have been misinterpreted. And, listen, she's under hot water. There's no way to sugarcoat that. She's going to have a lot of explaining to do before Congress. And rightly so. That's her position. She's an appointed position within the Biden administration, so she has to answer for whatever security failures happened at the event. So I think to pin all of the blame on her, I think is a little bit unfair. You could have General Patton as the director of the Secret Service, and if there's a faulty security plan, something bad could happen.
Now, an assassination attempt at the national level from a U.S. citizen or a group of U.S. citizens. We now know the shooter had a transmitter with him. The FBI still believes he was working alone. We're not so sure about that now. And now we're getting these reports that potentially Iran had a threat against Trump that Secret Service was aware of, and this was heightened security. Now, a foreign assassination attempt would be destabilizing on a global level in a totally different way. But if this was heightened security, what do we make of that? How much sway does the candidate, like Trump in this case, have over what the detail looks like? Was this typical for what you would expect for a heightened security scenario?
Yeah, let me just address something you said in the beginning there about sort of geopolitical consequences. And listen, I've great respect and admiration for the FBI, friends that are FBI agents, and I'm not demeaning them at all. But, the mission of the Secret Service is absolutely crucial to the functioning of our American democracy and our democratic system. If our elected leaders cannot make decisions based on their own judgment, then we've just become a banana republic, right? And, I am not being political in any way, but without the Secret Service, you would have a January 6th kind of like every day, right? So I think it's vital to have a very robust protective agency like the Secret Service that is vital to our American democracy. And then to touch on the second part about the Iran intel that came in to bolster, Trump's detail, it is, in my 13 years, every single event I ever worked as a Secret Service agent, every protectee I ever worked, especially the president and vice president, even former presidents, there was constantly streams of intel coming in about an attack or intel about an imminent attack or even from, geopolitical sort of aligned terrorist groups, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. So those threats are always out there. And the Secret Service has a very robust protective intelligence division that will monitor those threats as they're coming in. They have people embedded with the intelligence community, the NSA, the CIA, DIA, that have certain electronic eavesdropping capabilities to monitor those threats. And it sounds like in this case it worked. That one of the intel agencies got some sort of intelligence. They passed it on through the Secret Service Protective Intelligence Division, and then the service has to take additional steps to bolster security.
Can you answer why do you think the police response? It seemed slow. We've seen interviews now with bystanders pointing out that there's a person on this roof, pointing him out, gesturing to law enforcement. I think at various stages it's unclear whether maybe it's the local cops instead of the Secret Service exactly what's going on there. But it seems like that information could have been very quickly relayed to the people protecting Trump near the stage. Why didn't they whisk him away the second there is some idea, or at least have him get down, that there's someone on the roof? If I'm following the timeline correctly, there was at least like a minute and a half or 2 minutes of time where the authorities are fully aware there's a person on this roof, and then the shots are fired. And even there's been reporting that an officer engages with the shooter, and then the shots are fired at Trump. Why was there not Secret Service, getting him down before those shots? Because it was not news at that point to the law enforcement in the area that they were dealing with that situation.
Great question, Robbie. And let me address the first part. Every single Secret Service event that I ever attended and worked as an agent, okay, whether I was a post stander or on CAT, especially for the president, and the larger event, this would happen repeatedly, where something happens during the event that's suspicious, or a report comes in of a person with a gun, a report comes in of a suspicious package or an unattended package, or we think this might be a bomb, or someone has approached a magnetometer checkpoint that has a letter for the president. So these things happen all the time at every single event that the president attends. And think how embarrassing that would be, Robbie, for the president if every time one of these happened at an event, the Secret Service rushes the stage and rushes him off. So the service has to take a measured response to these sort of events so that it's not embarrassing to the president. When I say measured response, they have to figure out, okay, what do we actually have here before we start evacuating the president? And I know to the layperson, it doesn't look like that system worked here, but the Secret Service protective system actually worked in this case. They were moving to investigate what was happening. It just took a few seconds too long. All right, so, I know there's video out there of bystanders telling the police, hey, he's got a gun, he's up there with a gun. But, by the time that information is getting relayed back to the Secret Service command post, and then the Secret Service command post is then radioing out to agents and to the counter snipers and to the CAT team that, hey, we think there's a guy here with the gun. Those things took precious seconds. And unfortunately, he was able to get shots off before the counter snipers were able to engage him.
There are a couple questions about the inner perimeter, that there was a woman secret security agent that was not tall enough to shield Trump's head with her body, with her own head. And then in sort of between the second perimeter where the crowd is and the extend, tier, local law enforcement was supposedly in charge where this building was, where Thomas Crooks was positioned. Do you think that the Secret Service, upon sweeping that tier, was not thorough enough? Is it true that it's typical that local law enforcement is responsible for this tier? What do you make of those two breakdowns that have really made viral moments following this?
Yeah, let me address the first one. And I will probably get hate mail, and so will you, for saying some of this. I believe in an absolute merit-based hiring process. I believe in merit-based promotions, and I judge people on their character and can they do the job. And I've been involved in some of the most elite units in the world. I've trained with the most elite units in the world. I've been deployed to some of the most elite units in the world, Delta Force SEAL Team 6, the SAS. And one thing that I have found is you can never judge somebody by looks alone. You never know someone's capabilities by height and weight and how they look. I have been deployed with Delta Force guys that were, 5 feet 5 inches tall and 120 pounds, and they're absolute ninjas and will can out PT just about anybody out there. So I would hesitate in some of those viral posts that are going on, especially about that one female agent. You don't know anything about her. You don't know anything about her background. She could be a former Division I athlete. So I would just caution folks to, it's easy to jump on the bandwagon and call her a DEI pick, but I would really, really hesitate and tell people you just never know. You can't judge someone by looking at them. So I would be very cautious and careful in criticizing her. So, and the second part of your question was about the line of sight.
Right, yeah. So that sort of in between the crowd, which typically we have heard from Tim McMillan. The crowd is what the Secret Service is responsible, in addition to the inner perimeter we just talked about, and then the extend tier. But between the crowd and the extend tier, where long-range threats are, typically local law enforcement is responsible for that tier. Is that true from the events that you've worked? And do you think that...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. That is typically a local law enforcement responsibility. And listen, the reality is, in a perfect world, there would have been 1,000 Secret Service agents there and 50 CS teams. But the Secret Service just doesn't have those resources. The RNC started today or yesterday. Biden had an event on Sunday that obviously was since canceled, but the president had other events scheduled. So you have agents and counter sniper teams deployed all over the United States to support these other events, and the Secret Service has to position their resources effectively and efficiently the best they can with what they have available. So that's why the Secret Service has to rely on the local police to assist in securing some of these events, and that typically almost every single event I worked on, and I worked on some big national special security events, the State of the Union, and other large outdoor events such as some of the conventions. I was at the Denver Convention in 2008, the DNC when Obama received the Democratic nomination, and all of those, the local law enforcement really assist the Secret Service, especially in securing these outer perimeter posts. So the Secret Service is very reliant on them, and I think there's some reports about the Secret Service kind of being in conflict with some of the local agencies and a back and forth with who's to blame, and I really don't believe some of those reports, and I would just caution people that are reading those. They don't really know what goes on behind the scenes as far as the relationship between the Secret Service and the locals. And I look at that as a former agent, as a security professional. There might have been some sort of misunderstanding about who was responsible for what aspects during the security plan, and that's very, very common. That happens all the time.
So you mentioned earlier that if not for Secret Service, law enforcement, bad things could be happening all the time, and I get that. I absolutely think safety is very important, and we should put resources toward it. But it's not the case that correct me if I'm wrong. If I just have this wrong, it's not the case that Secret Service is routinely there is a guy with a gun on the roof, intent to kill the president. They are stopped, and is that actually happening all the time? It's certainly not reported on if it's happening all the time. It seems to me that almost never happens. Here's an example where someone was in the place to do that, was able to get off shots, wounded, thankfully, and no lasting damage done to Trump, but did kill someone, shot someone in the head right behind him. And this happened. This doesn't often happen. It almost never happens. But it happened this time, and we were unable to stop it. It's not like, again, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like routinely a actual threat is stopped and this one happened to get through. It seems like this almost never happens, and in the moment of need, the law enforcement, the Secret Service response failed, which is why people are, I think, so upset.
So, just to clarify, the Secret Service has stopped dozens and dozens, and my time there in the Secret Service, it was almost, weekly, if not monthly. The Secret Service would stop either an attack that was planned or stopped it based on protective intelligence, was able to uncover a plot. Those things happen very, very frequently. I was involved in one trip in particular in Mumbai, India, where the intelligence community uncovered a confirmed plot to assassinate Obama. And we bolstered security and sort of adjusted the security plan for Obama accordingly. So yes, those things happen all the time. Now, obviously not as dramatic, I hate to use that word, but not as sort of dramatic as what happened in Pennsylvania, where somebody's actually getting a shot off, because typically either A, the Secret Service is able to uncover that well before the person is able to get a firearm into the event and actually get shots off. We're able to, whether it's a tip from the public or some sort of intelligence gathered from social media, the service is able to uncover that well before, or the person shows up to the event and the security plan works, right? There's magnetometers, there's very robust local police patrols, and the person goes away. And so I just, as a former agent, I would say to that, hey, just because the Secret Service isn't out here publicizing and doing press conferences every week saying, hey, we uncovered this plot against President Biden, or we uncovered this plot against President Trump and we stopped it, don't think that that's not going on behind the scenes. I know, I was there. I can tell you story after story where the Secret Service, did uncover plots against some of their protectees, and were able to modify security plan or bolster security around the protectee.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, Bill Gage. Really appreciate you breaking all of this down.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
You've probably seen that the star of yesterday's Republican National Convention was not Donald Trump or J.D. Vance, Ron DeSantis, or any human. It was instead an English bulldog named BABYDOG. We love BABYDOG. BABYDOG belongs to West Virginia Governor Jim Justice. Here she was during her shining moment of well-deserved honor. Here she is.
I know that a lot of you want to meet my little buddy. So if BABYDOG could come on out here. Now, as the world watches, you didn't really expect that, did you? But with that being said, let me just say just this. She makes us smile, and she loves.
We love BABYDOG. Seriously, though, former Republican candidates Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, who just months ago had hoped they would be crowned at the Republican National Convention, rallied behind Donald Trump yesterday.
Donald Trump has my strong endorsement, period.
My fellow Republican, let's send Joe Biden back to his basement and let's send Donald Trump back to the White House.
And Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders also threw some darts at Joe Biden.
When I was President Trump's White House press secretary, the best job. I got the chance to take my 4-year-old son, Huck, to bring your kid to work day. Much like Jill now drags Joe to bring your husband to work day.
Looking ahead, Trump's running mate J.D. Vance is set to speak at the RNC today. GOP strategist Whitley Yates now joins us to weigh in. Thanks for coming back to Rising.
Thank you for having me here.
So I watched a lot of the convention yesterday, speeches by the people we mentioned, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Marco Rubio, Vivek Ramaswamy, many of the Senate candidates. I know yesterday's theme was on crime and safety and immigration, although the speeches were kind of just touching on all of the issues and how Donald Trump is, uniquely qualified to address them. It seemed to me it struck me that when there used to be some dissent against Donald Trump in the Republican Party, this is the height of his influence over the party. There is no one left who is actually in good standing or even remotely attached to the party who is opposed to him in any way, shape, or form. Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, who ran against him, who tried to inherit his mantle or move the party in a different direction, came nowhere close and are now, in order to have a future in the party, strongly endorsing him and working to help reelect him.
You know what they say, keep your friends close and your political enemies closer. And that's what you're seeing here. I'm not surprised that you're seeing those that ran against him and that honestly had some strong critiques for his leadership style now support him, because once again, Republicans will remain right and tight together, meaning that they would rather have Donald Trump in the White House than Joe Biden. And they will do anything to make sure that that happens, because having a Republican in power is better than having a Democrat in power.
Now, I don't know what could be more unifying for the country, Whitley, than a baby dog. That bulldog's pretty cute. But speaking of bulldogs, Rudy Giuliani was there and went viral for taking a tumble. He's since been doing a daily show from the RNC. He's present at the conference since losing his license in the state of New York. It was taken away. Is there any talk of Giuliani being a part of a Trump 2024 administration?
There isn't any talk that I'm hearing because, to be quite honest, the only people talking about the administration are those that are so keen and focused on Project 2025 and not Project 47. I think Rudy is really just here to support the Republican Party, to show up and to continue to be an advocate, not only for Trump but for Republicans.
So what can we expect today at the RNC? What is the mood there today? What are people looking forward to?
Everyone is looking forward to hearing Vice Presidential pick J.D. Vance speak. This is going to be a defining moment, not only for his political future, but for this vice presidency and Donald Trump's campaign. What is he going to say, and how is he going to be received, specifically for those who doubt that his journey from skepticism to strong supporter is genuine?
We've also seen a sign of fracture within the Republican Party. McCarthy made a cheeky comment about Matt Gaetz when talking to a reporter, pointing out that there's an ethics investigation into his inappropriate relationship with a 17-year-old girl. We thought the Gaetz-McCarthy feud was put to bed. Are any of these divisions around replacing the speakership position and this kind of feud, are any of those divisions taking heed at the Republican National Convention, which was supposed to be about unity?
I don't think that any of them are taking heed, but I'm not surprised that McCarthy threw a cheeky comment, specifically considering the way in which Gaetz led, all of those Republicans against him and ousting him from the speaker role. I'm pretty sure it's a soft spot for him. So any chance that he gets to go ahead and make a saucy comment, he's going to bring the sriracha.
Back again to Nikki Haley, who was only announced as a late addition to the RNC. Someone who had thus far declined to endorse Trump, and then in her remarks clarifying that she was, strongly endorsing him. This is someone who's had, I think, about 6 different positions toward Trump in just the last few years, from opposing him utterly to joining his administration to leaving his administration, saying she wouldn't support him, saying, well, if he is going to run, then I'm not running, then running anyway and being very critical of him, then losing to him and now endorsing him. How was she specifically received? Because I know she did make, some enemies in Trump world. Some of the base, online supporters, she sparred with Vivek, for instance, a lot on the debate stage. Was she well received? I think I detected a little bit of booing when she took the stage. It was certainly not overly representative of the response, and then maybe that booing died off as she made clear that she was strongly standing behind Donald Trump. What did people make of her?
You know, I think that her coming to this convention is a really good symbol of that unity, and the endorsement that she gave to Donald Trump, which to me she should have gave a long time ago when she dropped out of the race, was something that needed to happen. And the fact that it happened at the RNC convention on such a large stage is really just a symbol of the unity that we are attempting to continue to coalesce here. Now, whether or not she had been sending out tweets maybe 2 weeks prior, taking shots at former President Trump and his leadership style and his campaign is probably why she wasn't as well received with open arms. You know, I think it's like the family, then you got that one cousin that comes over and they always create a little bit of calamity, but you love them anyway.
Now, the political theater going on today is just palpable. You have Peter Navarro being released from prison Wednesday, just enough time to get to the Republican National Convention and give a speech. Is there a lot of excitement around Navarro coming? What are we expecting?
No one knows what to expect, but they are excited that he is getting out and is going to be able to make it. I think it's going to be one of those moments to watch to see what he is able to say and how he's able to really kind of lead people together away from what has been happening to him and then more towards mission, future, and vision for this country.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Have fun at the RNC.
The push to replace Biden on the 2024 ticket quieted in the aftermath of the attempted assassination of former President Trump. The DNC is planning to move quickly to confirm Biden as the party's nominee by the end of July through a virtual roll call weeks before the Democratic convention in Chicago. That would mean Biden would only have to face internal turmoil for just 2 more weeks. The DNC sped-up plan angered some lawmakers, and a letter circulated among congressional Democrats that argued there's no legal justification for an early virtual roll call. Several Democrats, including Representatives Susan Wild, Mike Quigley, and Pat Ryan, told Axios they plan to sign on to the letter. Now, the DNC Rules Convention Committee seemed to have heard their concerns and sent out a letter in response this morning saying the virtual roll call to nominate Biden will now happen in August. The letter sent to the Convention Rules Committee was first reported by CBS, and it said, quote, "None of this will be rushed. Unlike our nation's other major political party, our rules are set in public meets, anchored in the party's charter and its traditions."
Meanwhile, President Biden is forging ahead with his campaign. He was in Las Vegas yesterday speaking at the National NAACP convention, where he was expected to announce a new 5% cap on rental increases nationwide. Instead, said this. Let's watch.
The idea that corporate-owned housing is able to raise your rent $300-400 a month or something, but I'm about to announce they can't raise it more than 50.
This clip, where he started off by criticizing Trump, also went viral. Let's watch.
Here's what he thinks of black jobs. I love his phrase, black jobs. It tells a lot about the man and about his character. Folks, I know what a black job is. It's the Vice President of the United States.
Latest polling by Reuters Ipsos shows that Biden is trailing Trump 41% to 43%. So the move to get Biden the official status as the candidate is, I guess, off for now. It was very funny. They suggested let's just move this ahead while the news cycle is favorable to Biden being the candidate. For some reason, even though nothing fundamentally changed from the Biden perspective, in fact, if anything's changed, it's that Democrats are feeling even more hopeless in the wake of Trump surviving an assassination attempt, the party really rallying behind him. You know, you had Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, Marco Rubio, Vivek, people who, Vivek is not someone who opposed him, technically running against him though, but the rest, ideological rivals and opponents of him all falling in line. There's massive unity. There is no opposition to Donald Trump whatsoever on the Republican side. This is his moment. And the idea that you would just let Biden off the hook for all his problems because I don't know, it's pointless to even try, seems to be what some Democrats at least are thinking. But now there was a big kerfuffle over whether moving it early was going to mess with the, what was it, votes in Georgia or Ohio? I can't actually remember.
Yeah. So this was a whole exchange. Jamie Harrison on Twitter talked about, moving forward. Nate Silver took a liking to this. I don't know. I don't agree with his model, but I agree with how he's hard on Jamie Harrison, who's, the chair of the Democratic Party at the national level. And Nate was like, Jamie Harrison's lying in these news articles and in his statements. He's saying that, there's a law in Ohio that the votes have to be in by August 7th, I believe was the exact number, first week of August. Yes, August 7th. And there's actually no such law. And Jamie Harrison responds and says, Nate, you can call me a lot of things, but a liar's not one of them. So here we have Jamie Harrison and Nate Silver going tit for tat on Twitter over the legality of a presidential nomination. That's what's happening here. And so Jamie Harrison gets community noted on X. It's tagged to the legislator of Ohio's actual bill. That passed, so this is law. The virtual nomination is not necessary. If this bill that establishes a September 6th deadline takes effect on September 1st, it leaves 6 days for the Democrats to file the necessary paperwork. So they would have enough time. And Jamie Harrison is trying to say, we don't have enough time. We have to, do this in a rushed way because of X, Y, and Z state laws. They're very complicated. It's just not true.
Yeah.
It's an excuse because they want Biden to be the nominee.
Of course. Yeah, Nate Silver has been vocal. I mean, Nate Silver is always right from my perspective generally. But Nate Silver has very much been leading the kind of charge to replace Biden. I mean, he's not an activist within the party, just as a pollster, as a pundit, someone saying that Democrats really would need to make a gamble to improve their odds of winning the presidency by replacing Biden. That's something that a lot of people were talking about last week, but the media has moved on at least to some other subject. Now, I've heard that I read some stuff about behind the scenes Nancy Pelosi yesterday, maybe still interested in doing this. It's still being talked about, but I didn't think it was going to happen, and it certainly doesn't look like it's going to happen now.
Well, Jamie Harrison has to backtrack now because even if it is August 7th, there's no reason to push a roll call to next week as he was trying to do. Yeah. And I think at the heart of this is the donors are the main sway for the party. Everyone that's trying to win a down ballot seat, all of those Democrats that are hopeful in swing states to win a Senate seat, they will be impacted if their party doesn't have an influx of money for advertising. And so a Biden nomination would really hurt the party for years in the future. It would hurt their chances of securing a majority in the Senate. And really, if what they're afraid of is a Donald Trump presidency and democracy being in peril, they're going to need the legislator to be able to combat whatever's going on in the executive branch. So it's just the ego-driven reality of Biden wanting to be president, even though he knows he's not fit to serve. He shouldn't have to be answering for his cognitive state this close to November. He would be 86 by the time he's done. And so I think even though the media has moved on because there was an assassination attempt, behind the scenes we've got those donors and Republicans down ballot working pretty hard.
Well, and Biden is doing nothing to reassure anyone. His performance in the Lester Holt interview the other day was better than his debate performance, but that's not saying very much. This speech that we played snippets of, there was a lot of incoherence and confusion and losing track of what he was saying going on there. This is just going to keep going on. You're right that the chances of winning the presidency are seeming more and more distant, and that's going to start affecting the down ballot races. Already, Dems had a not great Senate map for this cycle, and then in next year the next cycle they have a brutal map. We were hearing at the Republican National Convention yesterday from a lot of their Senate candidates in Arizona, Nevada, West Virginia, Montana. All these states where there's a range of possibilities. Yes, Dems could hold on. Arizona's going to be very competitive. Nevada's going to be very competitive. A Democrat won in the Nevada race in the midterms. In West Virginia, that's a state that Trump won by a gazillion percentage points in the last election. That's going to be an almost certain Republican pickup. Montana, Jon Tester looks very vulnerable. In Maryland, the Republican Larry Hogan is a very formidable challenger. And, even you have, we heard from the Virginia candidate yesterday. The Michigan candidate is actually not decided yet. That was interesting. The RNC had the Michigan primary has not happened yet to determine who's going to be the Republican Senate candidate, but they had one of the candidates speak and not the other. I found that to be an interesting development. But anyway, it's going to be chaos for Democrats down ballot if Biden performs this badly. So I can see why. But just resignation seems to be setting in, not defiance. I know, it's not. They don't need to give up entirely. Biden is at his lowest point, his lowest likelihood of being reelected. Doesn't mean he's at 0%. This will still be a relatively close election, I expect. We're still talking about a handful of very competitive swing states where Trump is now up, but he's not up by 20 points. He's up by a couple points. Now, if the polls are as off as they were last time, then he's up by even more. And yes, it's outside the potential for Biden to win it. But you won't know until Election Day.
And it seems that Republicans are pushing hard for local races. They have a stronghold in a lot of state legislators across the country. Iowa is one of the states that is just all Republicans. And so I think about my home state of North Carolina right now, not the state I grew up in, but where I live and my family lives. Governor Cooper has made the state one of the few southern states that's welcomed in women seeking abortion, whereas a lot of other states have passed very strong abortion bans surrounding them. But Cooper's termed out. He can't run again this time around, and it's an election between Mark Robinson and Josh Stein. This is an election that could turn North Carolina back into a Republican state at the state level. That has huge ramifications. And so at the national level, the congressional races are hugely important, but also at the local level, Democrats could be hurt. And this is precisely where the abortion legislation that's been passed has been the most restrictive for women. So thinking about the down ballot ticket, it makes sense why so many Democrats are coming out and saying we've got to replace this guy, because it could influence the party for years and years to come if he ends up being the nominee and it hurts them that badly, not just at the national level, but also on these down ballot races at the state and local level.
The pain is unrelenting. The beatings will continue until morale improves. That seems to be the Democratic slogan right now. More rising right after this.
It reads like the beginning of a bad political thriller. A senator and his wife received gold bars and a Mercedes-Benz from a Middle Eastern country in exchange for access and favors. That basically describes the guilty verdict of Democratic New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. He was found guilty on all charges in his federal corruption case. The 16 charges included corruption, bribery, extortion, wire fraud, and acting as a foreign agent. A defiant Menendez spoke after the verdict. Let's watch that.
Obviously, I'm deeply, deeply disappointed by the jury's decision. I have every faith that the law and the facts did not sustain that decision and that we will be successful upon appeal. I have never violated my public oath. I have never been anything but a patriot of my country and for my country. I have never, ever been a foreign agent, and the decision rendered by the jury today would put at risk every member of the United States Senate in terms of what they think a foreign agent would be.
Democrats are calling on Menendez to step down. New Jersey Democratic Senator Cory Booker said he would take the lead. Here he is last night on with MSNBC's Rachel Maddow. Let's listen.
This is a painful day of real heartbreak and, frankly, just deep disappointment. A jury that was sworn to objectivity, a jury of his peers, found by the highest criminal standard beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty on all 16 charges. And so, yes, he must stand up now and leave the Senate. He must do that. And if he refuses to do that, many of us, and I will lead that effort to make sure that he's removed from the Senate.
Menendez is not required to resign. If he does not, some Senate Democrats are threatening to expel him. This would be a rare move requiring 2/3 vote of the full Senate. Only 2 GOP senators, John Thune and Josh Hawley, have so far explicitly called on Menendez to step aside, although I don't expect the GOP will be much of an obstruction here in terms of getting rid of a Democratic senator. Nadine Menendez, the senator's wife, was also charged along with her husband, but the judge presiding over his case delayed her trial indefinitely. She's currently undergoing treatment for cancer. So, convicted of these financial bribery, influence sort of crimes relating to what gifts he received from Egypt, from Qatar, and it's all pretty bad, pretty corrupt. And his own party has certainly turned on him. John Fetterman has been railing against him for weeks and weeks, but he's refusing to resign, and which is kind of remarkable, although increasingly people just don't resign from office when they're in hot water. But now they could take the step of removing him. This is not something that happens very often. In the past, when it's happened in this country, it was almost always for removing Confederates during the Civil War era. Usually the threat of removal is enough to get you to go, because I have no doubt that they will be able to muster a 2/3 majority. I mean, it's not like the Democrats are going to lose a seat. The Democratic governor of the state will simply appoint a replacement. So it's not going to change the makeup of the Senate. It seems to me like his goose is pretty well cooked.
Right. We are all embarrassed by the banana republic that is the state of New Jersey. I think that the amount of corruption in the state, it wouldn't be a Jersey politics story if there wasn't a real estate mogul involved. And of course, Fred Diabetes is involved. These gold bars with the same serial number were robbed from his home, his mansion in Jersey. 2 of them were found in the home of Nadine and Bob Menendez. 2
Stuffed
were
in the couch, right?
Right. 2 were found at a jeweler. Nadine had sold them to a local jeweler. That's fascinating. Was he a part of the bribery scheme? He has his own attorney, curious to see how he's involved in some way. But this story really goes to show how the wealthy elites of any country really all work together and are friends. Bob Menendez said a lot of the cash he has is actually because his family was hoarding wealth in Cuba and it kept getting confiscated by the government.
Oh, okay.
So this just like the absolute crooks that the elites are in Egypt, in Qatar, in the United States.
Yeah, just stacks of cash in gold bars hidden throughout the home. There's a stack of bills, $600,000 in cash in gold bars, stack of bills that were discovered in a boot. This is...
And a lesson can be learned by all of the crypto bros out there that are exchanging cryptocurrency, some of them for crimes, right? It's used as a way to circumvent the tracking of bank transactions. If a senator only feels comfortable with cash and gold bars, you probably should too. The idea that cryptocurrency should be relied on as an alternative to digital financial transactions and fintech, no, you should just stick with the analog stuff,
I'm
the cash and the
pro-crypto.
gold bars.
I mean, I'm pro-crypto, although I guess it, in some cases, is going to make it easier for criminals to get away with it. But the philosophy behind crypto, and I'm not really an expert in it, although many of my fellow libertarians are very enthusiastic about it, is that the financial system, the money system, is unstable because of the devaluing of the currency that the government engages in. So it's to create an alternative that is not subject to the bad fiscal policy of the government. And I think it's especially a good thing in less developed places in the world where the financial system is often very unstable. You can have whatever the local currency is, suddenly you have millions of them that are worth like nothing overnight. And so if you have your money in crypto, that's a safer thing to do in those circumstances. Obviously, it can be risky just like any other investment, and you should, understand what you're getting into.
In theory, I do believe that people could create an alternative currency to the US dollar that has more value, but they would need an economy
There's more stability.
I don't know about that. Maybe. But they would need an economy that's larger than the United States government. They would need the amount of workers and resources that we have. That's what gives the dollar value, and what gives cryptocurrency value is people investing fiat currency into it, like American dollars.
Well, right. Crypto people will say that the American dollar is fiat currency and is constantly being devalued by all of the reckless spending and the printing of more money,
But
and
crypto
so the
gets
value
its
of your
value
dollar
from the dollars invested into it, right? The more people buy crypto with their American dollars, the more value it has. So it's irreversibly linked.
Yeah, I get. As I said, I'm not an expert. We should have some.
And that's why
we can
Bob
have
uses
a
gold
for and
bars.
against person on crypto come in to explain
That would be
it.
fun. But yeah, I think that's why Bob's using the cash and the gold bars here. It's just goonish, cartoon level corruption.
Well, he says he inherited, or that his wife inherited the gold bars from her Lebanese family. Man, did he throw her under the bus, saying, and that he didn't know that she was hiding, and she has cancer, and he didn't know she was hiding gold bars throughout the house. So I would, not want to see that marriage up close. Now, actually, I have seen Bob Menendez up close a few times, though, because this was also reported. He loves cigars. There's a specific cigar place.
He seems like
in D.C. that he is at. He must go there 300 days a year.
We should go.
He is always there. We can go if we want. I don't go there that much, but me and the boys like a good cigar every now and then. So we'll make sure to extend you an invite next time.
Yeah, cigars with the boys and Bob.
And Bob. Well,
wait.
not for much longer, I fear. More Rising right after this. Elon Musk is leaving California because of the left. He said on X that he's out after Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill that prevents schools from requiring teachers to notify parents if their child changes genders or starts using different pronouns. That legislation came in response to a pocket of red district schools in the Golden Gate State that decided to instruct teachers to tell parents when kids made requests to change their pronouns. Now, while the LGBTQ community is happy about that decision from Gavin Newsom, critics are claiming that the state has overstepped and stomped on parental rights.
Musk not only blasted Newsom's bill, but announced he's leaving California entirely, posting on X, quote, "This is the final straw because of this law and the many others that preceded it. Attacking both families and companies, SpaceX will now move its HQ from Hawthorne, California to Starbase, Texas. Users on the platform applauded Musk's decision. One user said, quote, "This is leadership, Elon, thank you." Caitlyn Jenner chimed in, posting, quote, "Strong move, good for SpaceX." I just picture Elon with the energy of Eeyore, all sad, walking with a bindle and stick to Texas, or just to board his private jet with his bindle and stick. It's like he feels bullied for no reason. This is a guy whose wife was Grimes, of all people. He used to hang out at weird underground parties at MIT in Massachusetts and talk about new agey, far left, weird liberal ideas. And then he got divorced and he got sad and he realized he can make friends online by being this like anti-woke figure, and it's...
Or then he tangled or saw with, as a parent, he's a parent to many children, and he saw what the school system, how they violate parental rights. I mean, I have to say I disagree very much with the Newsom law. I mean, there's the requiring it aspect, it ends up being a little bit Byzantine. I had to make sure 10 times I said it right. So some schools wanted to tell teachers that if one of your kids in the classroom wants to use different pronouns, you should let their parents know about that. I think that's a fine policy for a school to set. And then now the state is saying the schools cannot make that policy. So in some ways, it's a violation also of schools just setting their own rules. Look, you got to get a permission slip to go on a field trip to the zoo. It's very common for schools to seek input from the parents if you're going to watch a R-rated movie or go or on a field trip. So the idea that it would be it's crazy that the school would keep the parents in the loop. I mean, we should not assume parents are abusive or something. In the vast majority of cases, they are not. So the idea that, to me at least, is nuts that teachers would be precluded from doing that. Again, I think that should just be left to the discretion of the school. And if you don't like that policy, you can go to a different school. But I certainly don't think the state has to. I utterly oppose, in fact, the state saying you cannot have that policy at the school.
One of the most interesting things I've heard from someone I know who is a teacher whose opinion I respect very much is that a lot of the children that go to school and are crying and throwing tantrums when their parents are around, but then when the teacher says, okay, like put your backpack in your locker, they're very obedient. They just go and do it. That's because they feel emotionally safe around their parents. And the kids that become very emotionally expressive at school but are obedient around their parents feel more emotionally safe at school. If you are a parent and your child is disclosing information about their identity to their teacher, but not to you, that signals to me that you have failed as a parent. You shouldn't need the teacher to tell you what your kid's identity is. So I think it's fine if you don't require the teacher to disclose that. Ask your kid, have your kid tell you. This isn't infringing on any rights of the parent. The parent doesn't need to be told everything the teacher knows about their kid or what their kid asks for at school. They have a right to know their educational record, and I just don't think this is their educational record.
Well, again, if the school wants to set a policy to that regard, that's fine with me. If a school wants to have a policy that, yeah, we're not going to inform parents about those kinds of things, okay, fine. Maybe I wouldn't send my kids to that school, but you can do whatever you want. This is the state saying the school can't have that policy. I mean, right, as you point out, teachers routinely notify parents about, if your kid doesn't turn in a homework assignment several days in a row or fails a quiz and this is atypical behavior for the kid, they might send a note or give a call to the parent saying, hey, is there something up with the kid because this is unusual behavior and I want to make sure everything's okay. Like some level of communication between parents and teachers can be perfectly typical and healthy. So if there's a change, and this is a personal change, but they're seeing how the kids behave up close, and the teacher thinks the parent ought to know about that. Again, I don't want to create like a police state for teachers to spy on kids if they think it should be kept private. I would really just leave it to the school and the teacher's discretion, probably. This is overriding that. I think there might be cases where it's very worthwhile for a teacher to clue in a parent to that.
But I don't see.
But I wouldn't require it. I just wouldn't ban it.
Well, aren't they banning the requirement? So there was a requirement in one school that resulted in this lawsuit, and this school required parents to disclose this, and now they're saying you're not allowed to require it. So it's up to the teachers to decide.
Right, but if the school wants to set that policy for its teachers and say that at this school, here's what to expect, our teachers would, in this kind of situation, let parents know, the state is now saying they can't have that policy. And I don't agree with that. Would I leave California over it? No, I would probably leave California over about 800 other things, including the high cost of living and the mentally ill people, crazy people on the street that we talked about in our segment yesterday. But I absolutely think we have lost the concept of parental rights in education. Parents primarily have responsibility over their children, not the school system. And this is what parents like Elon Musk and many on the right are pushing back on, the idea that your child belongs to the public school system, belongs to the state, and you're not allowed to have any say in policies or any knowledge about what they're even up to, that's outside your purview. And that's what parents hate. They've rebelled against it in state after state, in Virginia, in Florida, et cetera. That's why elections were lost, because parents don't like the idea of someone else being in charge of their kids.
I think if you're a parent and you're not doing a good job as a parent, so much so that your kid won't disclose to you what their identity is, that's your business. This is Elon Musk using the anti-woke mob on Twitter to gain support for a decision that is purely of corporate greed and purely a business decision. He has been building a company town in Starbase, Texas for months, if not over a year at this point, that I've reported on time and again. Employees will live in this company town, and now that it's nearing the end of construction, he's saying, we're going to California because California's too woke. No, you're leaving California because you're building a company town that makes George Orwell roll in his grave.
Because the business climate is better. Right. So he's leaving California because it's too woke and because the climate for businesses is oppressive. And he's hardly the first to do so. We hear story after story
oppressive for
people.
The business owner, not for the workers. I would say living in a company town where you owe your livelihood to your employer is the epitome of a loss of freedom.
If you don't,
he owns the rental units that his employees will be living in. He's their landlord and their boss.
These people clearly want to work there, as evidence that they do.
I mean, people are desperate for a job because you need American dollars in order to survive in this country, to have food and housing.
We all have to work in order to survive. I don't think that's a blow to people's freedom. Freedom just means you can do what you want on your own property with your own resources.
But your property's your boss's property in the company town.
You're constrained by, just like the apartment I live in is not actually my property because I rent space in it under terms of agreement. Am I owned by the company that owns my building? No, I'm free to leave at any time. I give them money in order to stay in the building. If I really don't like their policies, I'll move, as I have 5 times in the last several years in DC because there was some change to the policy in the building I didn't like, and you move. Your freedom does not mean other people are obligated to provide for you, because then that would be anti-freedom for them. Like if you're obligated to provide me housing and food and clothing, then suddenly you're not free. I have the right to pursue those things. I don't have the right to be provided them for me, because then I would actually be obligating someone else to do something. I mean, it's just negative rights versus positive rights. I'm sure this is an argument we will have many times in the future.
Right? And you're also a landlord. You're obligating someone to pay the rent, which finances your life, and give their labor to you, which finances your life as well.
Because I own something and you want part of it, and you're going to pay to get that benefit of something that I have.
But very few people own all of the stuff in America, Elon being one of the billionaires. You don't find that terrifying?
I do not.
I do.
I know.
I'm scared, Robbie.
I'm the opposite of scared. He's putting his wealth and resources toward defending and saving free speech on social media, making more environmentally friendly modes of transportation, and eventually building a colony on Mars. I'm the opposite of scared. I'm hopeful that he's going to save humanity from the crushing forces of oppression and environmental collapse and everything else. Don't you want a Mars colony?
No.
You
not
don't
as
want a
much
Mars?
as I want freedom for the working class of America.
Well, I mean, I want good things for the working class of America, but
just not freedom, just other good things.
No, I want freedom for them, but freedom to me does not mean the freedom to what the free. That's just not free. That the entitlement to some of Elon Musk's money. I don't think that's freedom. You work for him and he pays you, and a lot of people, millions of people probably, are happy to make that exchange. But if there are drawbacks or bad things about the practices at his business or in his property, I'm sure that it's fine to call them out. I'm sure we have in the past called them out on this show. I've criticized him numerous times for some of his policies. I don't think it's necessarily a violation of your freedom if he wants to have his company elsewhere.
I think at the very baseline we can agree that it is suspicious timing that he's leaving California because of parents' rights at the same time the Starbase
I agree with you. That's not the only.
Completes.
It's absolutely not the only reason he's leaving. I agree
very
with you on
suspicious.
That. Yeah, but fine by me. More Rising right after this. Morning Joe got the A-OK to stay on the air again today. The hosts spent their morning calling on Democrats to figure out what to do about Joe Biden. Let's watch.
The Democrats have got to either fish or cut bait. Like, if they can't drive Joe Biden from the race, they need to line up behind Joe Biden, because there's no middle ground here. You're either united, a house divided against itself can't stand. You're either united or your side loses. They've got to make decisions fast. And all these stories about Nancy furiously going around trying to undermine Joe Biden, it's not working. I mean, I don't even know if that's true. We keep hearing about Barack Obama and all of Barack Obama's people quietly working behind the scenes to undermine Joe Biden. If they are,
that's not helpful.
It's not helpful, first of all. And secondly, it's not working with the rank and file base.
Joe is also concerned about the momentum growing for the Republican Party.
After all of these historic moments, and Republicans are in Milwaukee, they know they're going to win.
Yet he's not buying any of the polls that say Joe Biden can't win.
Karl Rove said Joe Biden can't win. I understand. He's turned in a terrible debate performance. He has trouble in interviews. He always has. But again, I want to see the polling that says that. I want to see the numbers that say that, because all I hear is, oh, there's a secret poll. Oh, I've looked at internals of candidates and he's down by 87. Every public poll that's come out has this race tied, Mike. even after two of the most historic events in recent American political history.
A recent YouGov poll found Biden trailing Trump in every swing state. But a Fox News poll released Sunday, conducted before the assassination attempt on Trump, found Trump only 1 point ahead of Biden in a national head-to-head race, 49 to 48%. We know we don't have a popular vote in the United States to elect a president. We have this thing called the Electoral College, and it's a big mystery to us all. But I'm surprised they're back on air. Let's start there. After they flamed the decision to take them off air on Monday, we thought there could be repercussions for their strong words.
Yeah, their bosses apparently heard them and backed off. So they are on the air despite the fear the network had that they were going to say something, I guess, cancelable about maybe being sad the shooter missed or something like that, or one of their guests was going to say that. Joe there says, show me, I'm willing to believe that Biden can't win, but show me the numbers that prove that, show me the polling. Well, okay, that polling is available. It's not so much the national number, because as you said, the national number doesn't matter. Who wins the popular vote is immaterial. It's who wins the Electoral College. It's specifically who wins in the 6 swing states, in all of which Trump is now over Biden. It's close in some of them. Michigan, Wisconsin, still relatively close. The last poll I saw, I think, had him up 5 points maybe in Pennsylvania. These are still, I agree with Morning Joe that Biden, it's not the case that Biden cannot win. It's not impossible that he could win. It's just becoming less and less likely. It's going to be a roll of the dice, and if you roll a 1 or a 2, Biden could still win, and if you roll 3, 4, 5, or 6, Trump's going to win. Like, that's the odds we're at now. I mean, it's the same way it always works. Biden was favored to win in 2020, but it wasn't a certainty. Hillary Clinton was narrowly favored to win probably in 2016, but ended up losing. It's odds. Joe Biden could be reelected. It's just getting less and less likely by the day as he continues to turn in terrible, terrible performances at debates, during interviews, and as the news cycle comes to favor Trump, who survived a attempted assassination, very narrowly survived it, had that sort of very courageous and inspiring response to the shooting, is now, I think, has dialed back some of his divisive rhetoric and is making a pitch to all Americans that this is the way to unify. He now faces less opposition. I mean, the Democratic Party, there is way more dissension in what to do about Biden on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, there used to be a lot of dissension about what to do about Trump. There were people very against Trump. Even when he won unexpectedly to many Republicans in 2016, they did not all fall in line behind him. There's been kind of like several tiers of Republicans, people who totally support, at the elected level and somewhat in the base, although the base has always been very Trump supportive. People who wholeheartedly support Trump in every way, people who agree with his policies and will not criticize him and will support his policies but are a little bit less sold on him, people like Mitch McConnell. And then there were people who speak up and oppose him, Nikki Haley at various points, some of the more moderate Republican governors. At this moment, the entire party is fully behind him. You saw that last night. You saw would-be rival after would-be rival pledging absolute and utter fealty to him. The Republican Party has never been as united behind Donald Trump as it is today, and that is going to help him. So that's what Democrats, that's what Biden is up against, a party that is more in favor of Trump, more united behind him than ever before in the last 8 years. And Joe makes a good point to say it's not helpful if there are people within the party who are the party's leadership who should be in lockstep behind their candidate, theoretically, if they're going to run a successful campaign. He focuses a lot on the polling numbers. You make it a good point to disconnect the strategists from the base. I think the base of voters is important to look at because you have these people that are diehard Democrats. Some of them are critical of Joe, but will vote for Joe if he's the nominee anyway, and they would prefer someone else for many reasons. But the polling numbers are not the only thing that matters. The amount of money in the bank matters a lot. That's a key figure. You have Elon Musk committing $45 million a month to Donald Trump. Ridiculous that he said he was never going to give any money to either candidate for president and has completely gone back on that. But then you have the pro-Biden PAC with donors withholding $90 million unless he's replaced. That's
crazy. That's a figure that really determines success, because while you do have a base of people that if they like the candidate, they're very loyal to them. Trump has this, Biden kind of has this, but the key problem is a lot of the people participating in the election do not want to hear anything about American politics. They avoid it like the plague, and you have to reach those people with advertisements, with mailers, and phone calls, and that takes money. And so if money is what's on the line here, I think that is ending up the determining factor of if Biden stays in or drops out.
I don't think it's, I mean, you're right that the money hurts. I don't think it's going to force Biden from the ticket. And at some point what they're doing is, I mean, you know, to Mika's point, it's not helping. Like, they need to either fully commit to the effort to get him off the ballot, and like everybody has to get on board with that, and Nancy Pelosi has to call for it, and Chuck Schumer has to call for it, and all of the donors have to say not another dime from us, and everyone in Congress has to say it, and they have to get everyone in the media to do nothing but talk about that until it happens. You know, half-heartedly coming at Biden is not going to make him leave the ticket, and it is just going to damage his chances further. That's what they're doing right now. They have to fully commit to it. Even if they do that, I am far from persuaded that he will, in fact, get off the ticket. I mean, I've said this so many times now. I don't think he's going anywhere. I certainly don't think the attempts made thus far have changed his mind. They keep saying it's his decision to make. Well, his decision was made. The decision was made 2 years ago that he was going to run for re-election. That was the time, honestly, to pressure him. Now, it would have felt weird to do it then because he was coming off the midterm victory where Democrats had a much better than expected showing. The red wave did not materialize. Even I was surprised by some of their successful defenses in the Senate by winning the Pennsylvania seat and the Nevada Senate seats. That in particular surprised me. So I see why a defiant Biden at the time was like, well, of course I'm running for re-election. Unfortunately, he's the oldest person ever to occupy the presidency, and he is a lot more advanced in age even 2 years later. I mean, he seems like he's aged dramatically in just the last several months. Age is finally, I mean, it was always catching up with him, but has really caught up with him now, and so they're in this bad position. But yeah, I think they could all defect, and he's going to just ride this out.
David Weigel, who we've talked to on the show before, is on the ground in Milwaukee at the RNC and ran into David Bosey, the president of Citizens United, Republican operative. Weigel asked him, what's your take on the DNC potentially holding this early virtual roll call? It feels like a coup before the convention, ridiculous. They want to avoid a situation where delegates come and cast their votes for someone other than Biden. And if they start doing that, they can just like end the Zoom call or something. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot behind this virtual roll call idea. But he said, great idea. I want that hole in the Titanic as soon as possible. So Republican operatives are seeing this as something that could destroy the Republican Party if they try and nominate Biden early.
The Democratic Party, you mean?
Yes, sorry, the DNC. If they try and do this virtual roll call before anyone gets to Chicago in August, he thinks it's going to fracture the DNC, probably along the lines of who's called for him to drop out and who really wants him to stay.
Yeah, I think Republicans are just munching popcorn regardless of what's happening. Because on some level, while replacing Biden with Kamala Harris is really the only thing that could happen at this point, while that, I think, is likely to improve the Democrats' standings or in the polls slightly, it could also just be crazy and chaotic. It could also backfire. It would be entertaining. Like, there's no, to me, it's not a sure thing even that replacing with Kamala is like going to be a better result. And Kamala is still, even the polls that show, again, Kamala doing better than Biden, yes, still show her behind Trump. So it's not like, okay, if we make this substitution, now we've dramatically improved our odds of winning. I think they slightly improve their odds, and they should do it. But as I've said so many times, there is no they. It's just Biden. And Biden is not going to reduce his own odds of being reelected to 0 in order to improve the Democratic Party's odds by 5%. he's not going to do that. No one's going to do that. No political figure who is power-seeking does that because he is running for re-election. We always have to remember, because he wants to be president again. Donald Trump is running for re-election because he wants to be president again. He wants it so bad he was willing to risk multiple criminal conviction. He could, he's a rich man. He could be enjoying his retirement. Joe Biden could be enjoying retirement. Dianne Feinstein could have enjoyed retirement. RBG could have enjoyed retirement. All of these people seek power. We can't maybe understand it. It is alluring and seductive to them. They are going to continue to seek it. And I don't think, again, short of divine intervention, anything's going to stop them.
I think the Democrats miss this one key thing, which is they think that Biden, if he campaigns really hard and goes to the swing states, he's going to overtake Trump and within that margin of error end up being the winner of the contest in November. But he's already been running. He's already been the candidate. I think his polling numbers are as high as they're going to be. Whereas Kamala Harris gives a good speech. I watched her speech live when she was speaking in North Carolina. It was good. She was on the issues. She was countering Trump's messaging. And we haven't seen that. And so I think we see her ahead in Virginia. It's still within the margin of error, but still pulling ahead Donald Trump. I think there's more hope that if she became the nominee, then she could campaign and potentially bring the Democrats ahead, whereas I don't think Joe Biden can.
But to quote House of the Dragon, hope is the fool's ally.
I haven't seen that. I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, you got to catch up. We gotta chat about that before the show every day.
I know. We had Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Now I have to watch.
I know. I do appreciate
Dragon show.
how keyed you into Star Wars you are. So that's good.
I love Star Wars.
More Rising right after this. Old rivals Bill O'Reilly and Jon Stewart sparred on The Daily Show, reuniting on the show for the first time in a decade. O'Reilly, former Fox News host, came out swinging against one talk show for the way they portrayed the gunman. Let's watch.
So this kid, 20 years old in Pennsylvania, we don't know what caused him to do that. We knew he was a miserable kid who was bullied and all of this stuff, all right? We all know that. But we don't get into, oh, he's a Republican. That's the first thing they said on The View. The first thing they said on Monday on The View, he's a Republican. Stop it. That does nobody any good, all right?
But Bill, let me push back a bit. Look, you and I are both somewhat fossilized practitioners of the rhetorical arts that are confrontational at times, provocative at times, and we made a really spectacular living pushing those envelopes. It seems now to say, hey, these other people should stop.
The two also discussed whether it was even possible to tone down the rhetoric given these times we live in.
How can we have a conversation about rhetoric if we can't even agree, if there are delusions of it's really only them? I mean, when I watch the guy from the Heritage Foundation say, the revolution will be bloodless if the left, allows that.
Right.
And you're just like, what are we doing here? Some of the fears of people are justified. Tens of millions of women lost access to reproductive choice based on the decisions of that party. Those are real life consequences of great gravity and weight. How do we talk about those in a way so that you're able to express it?
It's not difficult to talk about it, and you don't have...
It seems like it is.
See, the mistake that you made, one of the many...
Yeah. Understood.
You're trying to get the fringe people in to be reasonable. You're never going to do that. The Heritage Foundation lead is not the fringe. And when I watch... No. It is. The people don't know what that is. Most Americans, I put the number at 70%, are good people.
I don't doubt
want acrimony. They don't want violence.
I don't doubt that.
Those are the people you play to, not the fringe people who are just out there wanting to, as I said, destroy the other party.
Bill O'Reilly and Jon Stewart reunited again. They used to, go back and forth. Jon Stewart would attack Bill O'Reilly a lot. Bill O'Reilly would attack him. I remember watching them argue about the rapper Common and whether he was supporting, was it Assata Shakur? I don't know, somebody who accused of murder. I don't even remember. But they always were fun to watch, entertaining. Maybe before your time, Jessica. I don't know that you were watching a lot of politics in the height of the Jon Stewart era. I think you were not.
No, I learned of Jon Stewart very late in my life. I think it was only over the past few years that I knew who he was. That's nothing personal about him, just never really cared to watch comedy.
He's going to be devastated.
Yeah.
He's going to be crying himself to sleep tonight.
He's a regular viewer of Rising, actually. But yeah, it sounds like these two really went at it. Jon Stewart ended up walking off laughing at the end of the interview and said, you know, we were able to disagree without hating each other, but now I truly hate him. So an interesting back and forth from them. A lot of liberals were like pissed that they reunited. Like, oh, this guy, Bill O'Reilly, is someone who's been accused of abusing women, and he's old, and Jon Stewart's against the gerontocracy, and all of these reasons for why he shouldn't platform Bill O'Reilly. And I think that's absurd. You're not platforming Bill O'Reilly's ideas. They're well represented in the public. You're just having a conversation across ideologies, which shouldn't be a problem. I mean, we do it every day.
Exactly. Bill O'Reilly is someone I've always been a fan of his commentary. He's kind of got that, I'm sure he would agree with this, grumpy, crabby, older next-door neighbor vibe who absolutely represents and speaks for a lot of people in this country. You know, he's actually not like an extremely ideological figure. He's had deviations from even, you know, he's a Republican, he's broadly on the right, he's disagreed, clashed with people on the right numerous times. I was, you know, my first TV appearance ever was on his show, although it was being guest hosted by a different Fox commentator, Dana Perino. So I was not on with him. He's on sometimes on our parent company Nexstar, News Nation. He's been on with Cuomo a number of times. I think they have a good banter. I think he's an astute observer of American politics with a lot of interesting things to say. So it absolutely, to me, makes sense to platform him. He's someone who's very good at the art of talking on television. I disagree with him all the time. I used to disagree with him. I used to watch his show on Fox a lot, and I would disagree with a lot of what he had to say. He was very much a drug warrior. I'm libertarian for the legalization of drugs, but he would bring people on to argue about it, and sometimes it would get heated. But I find him entertaining and interesting, and I think, as you said, it's good when people of strongly held views actually do argue with each other on TV. That almost never happens anymore. Our show is one of the only shows that regularly does that day after day after day after day with a wide range of perspectives, given all the other guest hosts and commentators and guests we have in the mix. People just... Media companies have stopped delivering that, even though viewers want to see it and audiences appreciate it, because I think it's difficult for everyone involved. It's difficult for the creative personalities. It's not fun to we yell at each other pretty respectfully, but that's not always been the case for the other person in the chair and I, and it's hard to do it. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it makes higher-ups uncomfortable at some point, or maybe it's hard on the staff to do it. It can be hard on the staff to do it because you have different people of very different ideologies wanting to push their stories and having arguments over what exactly to cover. It's easier if just everybody's on the same page, everyone's right-wing and the host is right-wing, or everybody's left-wing and the host is left-wing. But I think it's much more rewarding and makes a better product to not do that, do what they're doing in their own kind of more, they're not left-wing and right-wing, they're kind of a little bit more to the center than we are, probably.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. You're on the libertarian right side. I'm an actual leftist. Not many actual leftists have a seat on a news show, so I feel very lucky to be in this position. And the types of things we disagree about are very different from what Bill O'Reilly and Jon Stewart talked about. Right. We were just going back and forth on whether or not Elon Musk should have a company town and what is real freedom. They got in a disagreement about if Donald Trump hadn't denied the election results and hadn't done that in reference to January 6th, that he'd be up 25% in the polls, and that's what angered Jon Stewart on the show, which is just very different from any kind of exchange we would have.
Right.
But an interesting
I agree
point
with
from
that.
Bill O'Reilly.
January 6th was bad, and Trump shouldn't have done it, and he would be up 25 points if he had not.
Yeah, he pulled out his proof for his statement, and it was just reading out the changes in prices during the Biden administration. that is what his evidence is, that Trump would be up 25% in the polls.
That was an O'Reilly point? Yeah,
that was an O'Reilly point,
I agree with him.
I don't know if that means that Trump would be up 25.
I don't know if he'd be up 25 points. He did not do himself any favors by engaging in that behavior. The people I know who are generally Republican leading and want to vote Republican, like they're the one remaining hang-up for people who are inclined to vote for Trump is the behavior on January 6th. I don't know that that's going to end up holding back a lot of people at this point, but it certainly did not help him, and it probably hurt him.
Right. It's interesting to imagine that world. I can't, because that's who Trump is. He's the guy that when he loses, he says it was rigged. And so any other result from the 2020 election, I don't think it would have been a real Donald Trump. So I can't imagine that world, Bill O'Reilly. We don't have that guy.
Well, I don't think we'll get to imagine that world in 2024 because Trump's just going to win cleanly. But if he does not win, then who knows? All bets are off. We could have another fun January 6th storming of the Capitol disaster. No, that'd be horrible. I so hope it doesn't happen. I hope both Trump and Biden accept the results of the election. I hope that it's a fair election and we don't have any more of that strife. Please, God.
I, too, hope that Trump and Kamala Harris accept the results of the 2024 election and whoever her running mate is. Okay. That does it for us today. Well, this morning on Rising, not for the day, because I'm going to be back with Amber Athey, who is being a convention creature there at the RNC. So stay tuned. We're going to react to J.D. Vance's big speech.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere that you can get your podcasts. I'll see you back here tomorrow with Jessica. You can see Jessica and Amber tonight. See you later.
Bye, y'all.